Record on. Okay, here we are, episode 4 of the We Were Young podcast. For those watching on YouTube, I'm not going to do the hat reveal today because you can't read it, so that don't matter. I'm Dave Merlino. With me, as always, is my co-director and partner in crime, Dustin Sweet.
Howdy.
Say hi, Dustin. Say hi again.
Hi. Can you hear me? Is the mic working? Is this happening?
It's working okay. I believe we will be trying new mics in the future. such as the fun of starting a new podcast. Exciting day for us. Our 4th podcast. We are branching outside of the documentary, which has always been our goal to open this up. The podcast hopefully will live long beyond the documentary. With us today, gentleman who was in Vietnam, 1969 to 70, served as a radio telephone operator with the Blues as well. After returning home from Vietnam, successfully returning home, also dispelling the myth that radio telephone operators had a 5-second life expectancy. He returned home to Oklahoma, where he served as an electrical lineman and supervisor for 42 years and is now happily retired. We're talking with Mr. Paul McCord. Thank you for joining us, Paul.
Well, good to be here. Thank you. Thank you for the invite.
No problem. And we're all kind of learning. We don't have the documentary experience to fall back on in this interview, so please be gentle.
Yeah, don't hurt our feelings too bad.
Okay.
So
I'll get it started if you're ready for it, Dave. Paul, I want to jump right in. How'd you end up in Apache Troop? How'd you get?
Well, I'll tell you how I got into the Army. I was graduated from my high school in Sharon, Oklahoma, with 7 in my graduating class. High school graduating class, and went to college, spent some time in college, and still had this high school sweetheart I kept running home to see, and she, I asked her to marry me one weekend when I went home, and she says, I don't marry anybody who doesn't have a job. So I got a job with Northwestern Electric, started out with electrical utility, electric cooperative, and of course, then we had a child, and that meant I didn't have any deferments anymore because I'd used that college deferment, and I got drafted. And went to Fort Polk, Louisiana, on to infantry training in July of 1969, arrived in Vietnam and Bien Hoa. Spent a little time, like Jim Braun said last week, kind of hanging out in Bien Hoa because they didn't know what to do with me. And finally, one day they said, you're going to the A Troop 1st and 9th. And there I was, ended up in St. Ann.
Just kind of keeping your head down. You weren't exactly going up to your bosses and saying, I think you forgot to send me forward.
Yeah, we called it holdover or whatever. I was 3 or 4 days extra there. Everybody had kind of shipped out. And when I arrived in St. Ann, of course, there was a bunch of guys that arrived about the same time as me. And most of them, some of them you've talked to already in the podcast.
Yeah. And so did they look at you and say, you look like you want to carry a radio on your back, or how did you fall into that?
I don't know exactly how that happened, but when I got the radio, I thought, at least I won't have to walk point. Come to find out, the radio guy went every place with them. So it was they always had to have a radio person with them. So anyway, maybe it'd been better to walk point occasionally.
Did you ever have a point where you kind of felt like you had some nice cover going on, and then the lieutenant got up to move and you're like, guess I got to go with him?
Yes, there was I remember Qualley one time said they sent 5 of us out to kind of just, they had some stuff we needed to look at, and they just stopped these 5 guys, and Qualley said, you're the radio guy, you're going with us. And of course, it turned out to be a little more than just, but anyway, we made it back just fine, but we had to jump out in water, and I asked Qualley, I said, how did we know that wasn't deep, and he said we didn't. So it's about knee deep water. But anyway.
Yeah. And actually, we were just talking before I turned it on, just for my education on radio telephone operators, and it kind of it opens me up to a line of questioning that I want to ask you about combat that I think maybe the audience, for those who haven't been in the military, don't realize, and I'll get to this, but as a radio telephone operator, not everyone was talking to the helicopters like Jim was talking about last week. And stop me if I'm oversimplifying this, but you actually in a platoon have 4 or 5 radios. So you guys were consolidating the information, sending it to the RTO with the lieutenant, so that person could kind of funnel all the information together and send it up. And why I want to ask this is because I think when people think, oh, 21 of you in a platoon get in a fight, you can all see each other. But battlefields, engagements spread out, don't they? Like, would you even be able to see everyone, or what's it like?
No, not at all. But I was kind of the squad RTO I talked to all the squads. I was with Lieutenant Qualley mostly, and I talked to the squads. I never did talk to the helicopters. Occasionally that would have to change a little bit, but not very often. But so he had to coordinate the squads where they was and moving, and we had 4, 5, 6 guys in each squad, and they each had a radio. Not each had a radio. There was 1 radio per squad, so there was quite a few radios out there, but you never could see everybody. No.
Yeah. What is the phrase that everyone has a plan until that first bullet flies?
Yes.
And then it does spread out and become, for lack of a better word, chaos, and it's all flowing through you, right?
Yes, and it was and of course sometimes Qualley just took it himself, and however, I say Qualley, Blue, whoever was Blue at the time.
All right, and I don't know why this popped into my head, because it's not like today where everything was wireless, like that phone was actually connected to your back. Did he ever go to move and the cord kind of yank him back because you didn't know he was moving?
Yeah, there was a time or two you followed the cord for sure, but there was a time or two you was moving in a hurry.
Dustin, go ahead. I know you look like you have a question.
I don't. I'm just happy to hear anything about his time out. While you're in the Blues, did you rotate into the talk after a while, or did you
Yes, I did. I rotated into the talk. I was married and had a child when I got drafted.
Right.
So I think somebody kind of knew that and helped me out a little bit after, so when I come back from R&R, I remember telling my wife when I come back, we met in Hawaii in 1st of March, and I remember telling her I'm going to be out of the field. I'll be in a talk. But so I spent my last 4.5 months in a talk.
All right. So doing some math here on your R, you went on R&R March 1st. Does that mean you were in the talk on March 19th when these guys say they should have died?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Were you communicating with them, or like what was
that? No, I was communicating with helicopters, but I knew everything that was going on. That was tough. You want to be there, but you're glad you're not, if you know what I mean. Because your friends, your buddies are all there. And but yeah, I remember that very, very well.
Yeah, I can see. I'm forming this because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like you're saying, like you want to be there for your friends, but you're really happy that you're not out there, because that was a wild day. For those listening, we've talked to some of the members of the Blues. March 19th was when a platoon of them, I think there's about 20, ran into a battalion-sized element of NVA, hundreds of NVA, and they will all tell you that they should have all died that day on March 19th, 1970. Do you, like, after that's all over, how do you process all those emotions that you had about that day.
Well, you know, first of all, I remember meeting them at the flight line when they come in. You know, it's happy to see them, but honestly, we didn't talk much about it after we come in that I remember. It was a job they done, we did, and we was back, and you know, a few didn't come in that night, but anyway, it was. I remember meeting them out there and just be glad to see them. I didn't run over and hug anybody, but I was just glad to see them home.
Yeah, and then you got to see what the next day brings, huh?
That's right.
And then, so to backtrack that though, for you, you know, this is a question that we've asked everyone, so I don't think you'll be surprised by it. Do you remember the first time that first day you were in combat and the first rounds flew in anger that day?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. First of all, I think I wanted to make that first contact because I wanted to see how I'd react. You know, we were trained, we got infantry training, and honestly, I didn't want to make any more after that one, but I remember it pretty well. And we had a guy injured that day, one of our M60 guys, and he never come back. He was a chest wound. So, but I thought, we're in war. This is real. This is a real thing, you know, and wondered why I ever thought I wanted to make contact. But it's just one of those deals. You're trained, you want to do it, and you see how you react.
Well, and that leads to an interesting question. You know, on all the time we've been talking to veterans, it's never occurred to me. You obviously knew at some point it was going to happen. Like, there's no way you were going to go through a year in Vietnam without, especially in Apache Troop, without having enemy contact. Is it just does it become a nervousness thing? Like, can we just get this over with? Like, I know it's going to happen. I just want, like, I'm tired of wondering if this is the day, or.
I don't know if I really actually had those thoughts. The first contact I remember come pretty early and going to the field. I don't know if it may have been my first time out. It may not have been. I can't remember that, but it was pretty early. So I just knew that it was going to happen. And I wanted to know how I was going to react. If I was going to turn around and run, you know, if I was going to crawl under a rock someplace and do nothing. But I found that I guess I reacted like I was supposed to.
And would you say, again, trying not to, I always try to make sure I'm not, I mean, this is an honest question. I try to make sure I'm not sounding flip about this, because it's not like, and I never want to sound like, you know, this became a routine that you got used to, but getting that contact out of the way, finding out that you knew how you were going to react, did that quell your nerves a little? Obviously, you're never like, oh, combat, no problem, like, bring it on. But did something change in you that day?
Yeah, you know, kind of. I knew I could handle it. I didn't want to do it anymore, probably, but I knew I could handle it. And I knew I was with a bunch of guys that could take care of me. Is also a big deal. That you know, was the first time out, didn't know many people real well at the time, and I knew those helicopters above me would take care of me, and we had a bonus, you know, and so it did give you that little more confidence when you went out. You almost knew I'm coming home. You know, but didn't always happen that way. But
Dustin,
a lot of guys have really. I mean, there's a lot of harrowing combat stories, right? Do you have any? Did you have any fun? Do you have any like fun memories of being in country?
Oh yeah, and one time I think it was Jack Hughley was our blue, and we just went out on a mission that 3 Vietnamese on bicycles were in an area they should not be. And they wanted us to go pick them up and question them. Of course, I guess we'd call them POWs. But so we, 5 of us went out, and I know Jack was one of those, Blue, and we loaded them in the helicopter, just sit down beside them on the road, no deal, made sure they didn't have weapons, loaded them in the helicopter, and one of them was kind of screaming and I thought he wanted his bike. They was on bicycles, so I picked his bicycle up and threw it in helicopter. When I got it in, I realized there was something on it that was moving, and thought, oh, we're in trouble. So I throw it out, and between me and my M16, we actually destroyed his fish that he just caught. And so he didn't have dinner that night. But anyway, that was kind of, when you look back, it was kind of funny, and he's probably sitting back and saying some GIs destroyed his dinner. But anyway,
we like to call them people of interest when we had someone we needed to question.
Yes.
You know, we've along that line, we've talked about being in combat, and that there was a change in you, kind of transitioning forward to kind of the main part of what our podcast is about. It's more about the return home. Would you say, or how, I mean, this is an easier question. How would you say you were different upon returning home, or did you feel you were different than the Paul McCord who went to war?
I don't, you know, I didn't really have a lot of trouble. I come back to Fort Carson, Colorado, for six, 7 months, and had a chance to kind of shove all that stuff in the back of my mind. Believe it or not, we didn't even talk about the war. You know, we knew we was Vietnam veterans. I done something different than somebody else. They done something different than me, and we didn't. I don't remember telling any stories. We just didn't talk about it. We wasn't supposed to. Nobody wanted to hear it, and nobody wanted to talk about it. So when I come home, 21st of February and went back to work, 8th of March. I had a wife and 2 kids. I had a daughter born when I was in Fort Carson. So I had a wife and 2 kids. I needed to get back to work, and honestly, I just shoved everything in the back of my brain. And you know, the guys I worked with knew I was a veteran. They knew I'd been to Vietnam. I might have told them a funny story or two, maybe about shooting a fish, but I have not told any stories until I got back with the Blues in these last 4 or 5 years.
Wow. What's that experience been like for you? Just talking about it for the first time in 40 years.
Well, that's I'll tell you what, you guys helped me do that. Whether you know it or not, I was just looking at Facebook one day and seen Apache Blues. I believe it's Soldiers Unknown. Yeah. Come up on
that
Facebook.
Was original name, yeah.
And I just kind of freaked out. I told my wife, I said, there's 25 people that know who the Apache Blues are, and I'm one of them. So I kind of scrolled down through that on Facebook, and there was my picture with the group, even my name under it, and I clicked like on it. As soon as I click like, I get a message from a guy by the name of Richard DeValley. I had no idea who I was talking to. We went back and forth a little bit. I knew we was together. I knew from the conversation. So I went to CBS video and looked it up and said, Doc DeValley. Oh, so I called him, said, are you Doc? He said, yeah. And first thing I said to him was, I thought you were dead. And he said, oh, I'm not. And that's where it started. He sent me the stuff for the reunion in Washington, D.C., and the best thing that happened to me. Yeah, in a long, long time. I get emotional thinking about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, we met you at that reunion. That was our first reunion that we'd ever been to. And, we all went to the wall together. You were with us when we went.
Yes.
You're actually in the movie in the background when we went to
Yes.
the wall. And I had no idea that was your first reunion. Like, I thought you had been in contact with these guys forever. It wasn't until a year later when you told me that was your first, and you told me that story, and of how it was just, I had chosen a picture at random because we needed a post that day, and you happened to be in it. And I'll admit that was kind of one of those weird moments for me when I realized that this is way bigger than just making this movie. That just that one small thing that I did one day had such an impact that it was kind of a mind trip, really, in a good way. And I really cherished that story. But it was, yeah, I remember when you told me that, I was just like,
Washington D.C. was a Washington D.C. and as a tough old electric lineman, I don't like to admit I cried, but I'd go to my room at night and it was emotional because I seen these guys, Sanchez and Qualley. The last time I seen them was they was picking them up out of the jungle, you know, and 47 years later, I was in Washington D.C. with them, and so going to the wall with the group was emotional, but it was also very healing.
You guys fell in like you hadn't lost any time at all.
That's what my wife said. She said, you found your family, your new family. And she says, I'm hearing more about you than I've heard in the 50 years we've been married. And so she said, I want you to tell stories when you go home. I want your grandsons to know what you've done. And
did you?
And so we have. I've been open. I've even been a speaker at a Veterans Day ceremony since all of this has happened. And so it's the best thing that happened to me as far as military. And I do got a family. We talk back and forth now. We call and December 5th, I called Joey. I called Gary. You know, I was one of the front four in that and the only one not hit. And so.
I had no idea you were in that at all.
I was, not to tell war stories, but Tim was the point man, then Joey, then me, then Lieutenant Qualley. I had a lot of guilt about that when I got back. I come out of that, I was the tallest guy with a radio on my back, and I come out of it without a scratch.
Well, and that you did an excellent job of anticipating my question. It is, you know, we've talked to Tony Cortez about, you know, how he was sitting right next to Doc next to Ed Beal and I believe Craig one day, and they both Ed got grazed by a bullet right across his head, and Tony's sitting 2 feet from him and you know, didn't get a scratch. And it is, you know, it is definitely the way the dice kind of fell at some point. You know, is that something, when you say you felt a lot of guilt, was that just kind of in the immediate aftermath of that day or throughout the year?
No, that's the only thing I felt when I come home really was I didn't want to talk about the war, didn't do none of that, but I felt guilt because lost people had people hurt, and I had some pretty close calls. I come home with a few medals and no Purple Hearts, which is
you're like the only guy in A Troop.
Tony didn't get one. Well, on the other hand, you look at someone like Craig who received 3 Purple Hearts, and people joke that it's just because he didn't know how to duck.
Yeah, I mean, who has a point man with 3 Purple Hearts? Huh?
Yeah, I mean, at some point you got to put him in the back, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And the talk about the reunion is a fascinating thing, but I actually am going to pivot because there is one other person who was there that I'm going to save the general reunion discussion for, hopefully for another episode. But you mentioned you did your training at Fort Polk, and I'm going to transition to that because 1 year after that, we actually went to Fort Polk with you to the Tigerland training grounds, back to where you guys would train for a Vietnam reenactment ceremony. And I bring this up because when we first met our original core group of guys, we talked to them about going there, and it was absolutely not. No way I would ever do that. No way I would ever go back to Fort Polk. I'm not going to face that. Never going to do it. A year later was kind of like, well, I don't think I could do that. 2 years in, I got a call from Doc saying, we're going to Fort Polk and we want you to come with us. And so Dust and I said, all right, I guess we're going back to Louisiana in the summer. But you were one of the veterans that there was four of you who went. What was that like to be coming back into the Tigerland training ground almost 50 years after you had been there to go to Vietnam. And not only that, not only going back, but watching reenactments with people dressed in, and we'll get into the reenacting in a second, but just that initial driving up the path into there.
Can I back up just a little bit?
Absolutely.
In '89, I did go to reunion of I think it was the second one they ever had in Fargo, North Dakota. I did not want to go. My wife thought I ought to go. She bought me a ticket and went. I didn't enjoy it. I did not enjoy it. I didn't want to go back. Honestly, there were some people there I enjoyed seeing. I think Dwayne was there. I think Tony was there. I think Ed was there. And Paul Ingebretson was there. But I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to talk. So I just forgot it. Went on. And that's when then this other one come back. So I just about didn't go to Washington, D.C. because of that. My grandson, one of my grandsons said, you told us never to live with regrets. If you don't go, you're going to regret it. So I was glad I went. Louisiana was just about the same way. I didn't know when I left Fort Polk, I said, I'm never coming back. But again, it's one of those deals that almost had to force myself to go, even though I knew who was going to be there. And I missed Dwayne in Washington, D.C. He didn't get to go to Washington, D.C., so I knew Dwayne was going to be there. I wanted to see Dwayne, and so had a great time there. So I was glad we went, and it was easier than I thought to go back to Fort Polk.
And so actually getting into, we'll get into more of the specifics of that trip. We actually, met through Daryl and Julie Price, who run the Tigerland reenactment. The first time I met them, I was like, war reenactors, like how does that fit into our documentary? People, I'm sure there is someone listening right now saying, those guys who run around and pretend that they were in Vietnam. And after talking to them, it's actually a very serious deal that they take to be a living history. The reason that they go to Tigerland is because they do the Trail of Honor, where people can walk down and, starting at the Revolutionary War, they talk to someone in full, and they talk in the first, as if they were the soldier there, and they want to make sure that they're getting it right. So keep that, because Vietnam's not taught in school anymore. It's not. It didn't happen in the eyes of the school curriculum. So as the veteran going in and seeing what they're doing and seeing what they're trying to keep alive, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, going there, I thought we were just going to see a bunch of wannabes. You know what I mean? And I don't think any four of us were really we was glad to get to be together, but I don't know if we was really actually wanting to go to the site. It was one of those deals, yeah, we'll go. And so, but found out that this is something that we need. Like I said before, after being with the guys that are doing it, they want everything accurate. They treated us like royalty, but they wanted to know what all we done. They wanted to make sure they were accurate. And after that, like I said one other time, told you that I think we got to remember history to move forward and keep that history alive. And that's what they're doing. They're keeping our war alive and letting people learn about it. And so I was pretty pleased with the way all that went. And Daryl and Julia have become friends.
Yeah, they're great. They're good people. I'm sure they're watching right now. I do remember that on our last day there, they were all asking you guys for your autographs as autographs of Vietnam War veterans. And I thought to myself, that is not something I ever thought I would see. And it was a good moment.
It was a humbling moment for sure.
Yeah. And it was fun to watch people get asked for autographs who'd never been asked before. That was the first time I was ever asked for an autograph, believe it or not, was not connected to movies. It was when I was 20 years old and riding my bike across the southern U.S., which is my 25th anniversary of that. We were in a town called Sanderson, Texas. The whole town came out and they had our poster for the trip, and some of the grade school kids came up and not just signed, but they're like, "Can I have your autograph on the sign?" And I was like, some 20-year-old kid taking a semester off from college to ride my bike. But I was outwardly, I was like, I would love to give you your autograph. What's your name? And I felt like such an imposter doing it, but it was pretty fun. And I saw that kind of on your guys' faces too. Like, well, you want my autograph?
Yeah. Yeah, and they was what was impressive is they was wanting to do what they was doing right, and they asked us a ton of questions, and you know, how did you carry your radio? What did you do? You know, and it was a fun time.
Yeah, and like they said, it's one thing to say, oh, the radio was so heavy and it was so hot, but they go out there in June and carry the radio in that 100-degree heat, because it is, for those who don't know, Fort Polk and Tigerland was chosen as the training ground because it's the climate that in the U.S. that most resembles Vietnam, and the humidity and everything of what you guys would go through. So that's why they do it. Like, it's one thing to say, oh, it was really hot there. It's another thing to have carried that radio all day.
Yes.
Through the bushes, and it is a rattlesnake estuary, which we didn't tell you guys about before. So you do have to wonder about snakes too, just like you guys did in Vietnam. Dustin, sorry,
Yeah,
go.
I'm wondering, having been a radio operator and then working in the telecom industry for the rest of your life, how has it been watching cell phones come up? Has that been fun, or how have you enjoyed that part?
Now, say again, Dustin, I didn't quite understand it.
I said, how well have you enjoyed watching cell phones come of age?
Oh, well, I was in the electrical part of the industry. I provided electricity for, but cell phones. So I wasn't with the phone company. I was with the electric company. But
Right. Well, but they paid you back, right?
That's been unbelievable. I'm just glad people didn't have phones in their cameras in their pocket when I was growing up. You know, but it's been unbelievable, and to see the technology being able to do what we're doing right now is amazing to me. So,
Well, and we had the talk with General Funk at the last reunion about if only there were drones in Vietnam. Do you ever look at the technology today and say, man, if we had that then?
I had the opportunity a few years ago to go to Camp Gruber. It's in Oklahoma with the National Guard training. We had an employee that they wanted some of his supervisors to come, and they was just getting ready to ship them, and it was quite different than the training we've been through. The weaponry was quite different, and it was a great opportunity to get to go do that.
And that actually does transition really well to our next kind of phase of what we like to talk about. You know, as a Vietnam veteran, you have a 50-year head start on returning home, and it's a wild roller coaster at 50 years with, you know, how Vietnam was not talked about for decades, and knowing what it's not like to not talk about it, to, you know, as you said, you've been to your reunion and really felt what it was like, you know, to talk about it. If there's a veteran out there listening, or if you had a chance to tell a veteran returning home, what advice, as someone who's been through this, what advice would you give them?
And that is some advice I learned. Talk about it. You know, I come home to be electrical lineman, and it was kind of a dangerous job, so I shoved all this Vietnam stuff in the back of my head because I had to concentrate on work and raise a family. But I'd have been better off talking to, you know, I got a great wife, 52 years of marriage this year, but I never even talked to her about it. I had some triggers, you know, that would set things off once in a while. I've never had a lot of problems, but I did have some problems. I never have seek any kind of help with it. I've always kind of worked through that. But you've got to talk. And as I had to have an opportunity now to talk to some veterans, that's what I want to hear, their stories. I don't care if it's in combat or not. I just think that person that served their country needs to talk about their stories. And everybody that put a uniform on and served their country, to me, is I just done a job that was assigned to me. You know, other people have different jobs assigned to them. I had a job assigned to me as an infantry soldier, and I just done my job. and that's all I did.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. We were actually talking with our producer this morning about branching out the podcast, and it reminds me, I read a story a long time ago from one of the Donut Dollies, the Red Cross girls who would be there on base, and obviously they never went into combat, but one of the Donut Dollies was saying that she had made really good friends with one of the guys who was there, and he went out on a mission and he didn't come back one day, and it really hardened her heart, so to say. Like, she just was afraid to make friends after that because she was afraid that she would have another friend die, and that's something that's stuck with. And so it is, being deployed to a war zone, you don't have to be infantry to taste that experience of war. And that is a really good point, that everyone needs to tell their story, not just the point man or the person out there.
My dad was a World War II veteran. His brothers, all four of them, were in World War II at the same time, which is, to me, in the story, those are the heroes. My mother's brothers were all three at the same time, but I don't remember him ever talking about it. My dad was a medic. I don't remember him ever talking about it. Just that I was a medic. He was a conscientious objector. He didn't carry a gun, but he was a medic. And so, and my son was in the Navy, and he went through a time that, Dad, you was in a war. I've never seen a war. And I said, son, you served your country. You done the job that was assigned to you, and you did it. And that's all I did. Basically all I did, the job that was assigned to me.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with not being at war.
Yeah. No, nothing wrong with it. No.
No. And actually, that reminds me, we've asked every veteran so far, are you, Paul McCord, the one who declared war on Vietnam? We're trying to find the person, the soldier, because obviously, people seem to blame the soldiers. Are you the one who declared war on Vietnam?
No, I don't remember doing that if I did, but I'm pretty sure I did not.
I'd like to think you'd remember that, but I'll take your word for it. Dustin?
Paul, what's it? How has it enriched your family life to be able to talk about these past times? Has it made the rest of your day-to-day interactions smoother?
Yeah, being able to freely talk about it is really been good for me. I can't say my family looks at me different, but they never heard any stories. My wife, I never forget the first day in Washington, D.C., she got back to the room and she says, "You've never said anything like this, never." And my grandson in his senior from college, some essay he had to write about American hero, and he interviewed me, which puts a lump in my throat thinking about it. But so I got to write some stories down, and or he wrote some stories down, and got a real good review on his deal, and so those stories. So it's been good. It's really been good. Telling the stories, I found out, is important. As I talk to veterans, I say, you got to tell your stories. Don't keep them to you. Somebody's going to listen. We thought nobody would listen, is why we didn't tell them, and nobody cared. But there's people that will listen now, especially as we've got this age, 50 years later.
Yeah, and I think that is, we've said it a couple times before. Talking with veterans is not about solving problems. It's just about listening. Just the fact that you would like to listen to their story is enough. And I've said it plenty of times on this podcast. It's not one talk and good to go. Yay, we solved that. It is just being there and listen, and that's really all that's needed. Unless you want to counteract me, Paul.
No, just listening, and that's important. Just it makes a veteran feel good that somebody will listen, because nobody ever wanted to listen. We didn't think anybody ever wanted to listen. Matter of fact, back in the 70s when I come home, a Vietnam veteran was a crazy guy, that had that reputation. So you didn't tell people you was a Vietnam veteran. And now I freely tell people I'm a Vietnam veteran, and it starts a lot of conversation.
Yeah, and the crazy Vietnam veteran trope in Hollywood didn't really help that either.
No, TV, and if you look at some old TV reruns, you'll see that there's some crazy. We had that reputation.
And actually, this is a question we haven't asked for a long time, so we're going to break it out for you. Do you watch war movies, or are you able to watch them? Do you watch them with a grain of salt and say that's like, what are your reactions?
I don't watch war movies. I tried, and I just don't do it. I don't enjoy them. I don't hunt. I don't even own a gun. It's not that I don't like to shoot. I don't like people beside me with guns. And that I tried hunting when I come home. My family's all rural. They love to hunt. And I just, no matter how good they were, I did not like people walking beside me with guns. It just put a fear in me. So I don't do that. I don't watch war movies. And a lot of it was the first couple ones I watched were just so phony. And I just thought, I don't even watch Civil War movies. I don't watch any of that. So.
Yeah, and that's a very common answer that we've gotten. So you don't feel like you're in the minority there with that answer. That's a very common answer to war movies and to hunting and guns. Since I can't count how many veterans I've talked to so they've never wanted to hold a gun again since returning home. So
yeah, I'll admit I tried it. Tried some quail hunting, tried some dove hunting. Wanted to get back into that, but I just don't enjoy it.
Now you do all your hunting at the grocery store?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Why hunt when you can go to the grocery store and get it? Yeah.
As an aside, that reminds me, my daughters are 13 now, but I think when they're about 6 or 7, I've had one daughter she's a very sensitive soul, and I love that about her. I'm not making fun of this, but she's always kind of skirted around, like wondering when she's going to try vegetarian because of don't hurt the animals. And so we're at the store one day, and she was like, I don't understand why people would kill animals. You shouldn't kill them. And so I looked at her and it's like, well, should I put this chicken back then? Should I not buy the chicken? And she looked at me, matter of fact, no, that one's already dead, so might as well keep it.
Yeah.
Like, all right, good.
Yeah.
So,
Well, us people that eat meat, we're kind of saving the grass for the vegetarians. So we're pulling that beef off the grass, and they can have the grass and we'll eat the beef.
everyone does their part.
Yeah, yeah.
That's all of my questions that I went into it thinking about. Dustin, how are you doing?
Those are he's answered everything I've asked him about.
Paul,
I got nothing else, Paul. Is there anything you'd like to ask us?
So, no, I just want to thank you guys for doing this. You've helped a lot of veterans heal. Watching your documentary in was it in Kansas City, I guess, made me realize that we all had the same problems. We each of us, when you think your problem's just yours, sit and listen to the guys talk about guys I served with that I had no idea struggled when they got home, and so that's been really good to me. And so it's been good. I've started a lot of things with veterans now. I even do a veterans Bible study for veterans with associated with the church, and that's been good. So it's all of it's helped me a lot to talk, to be with people that I served with, and it's just been great. It's been the best thing that happened to me, and it hit me a perfect time, retirement, and that's kind of when some of the PTS started coming back is after I slowed down, and the job wasn't a priority, and I'm through with the job, and now I got other things to think about, and all of that stuff started coming back, and so it's been very good, very good.
and that's been a common refrain that we've actually heard. I wrote a study saying that Vietnam vet, like you said, you were at work within a few weeks of returning home and nose to the grindstone. And they're noticing a lot of Vietnam veterans did that, and now in retirement, nothing to put your nose to the grindstone to, and finding out you just kind of delayed the bill, quote unquote, for a while. And for people who caught it, there's probably someone out there saying, wait, he's seen the movie. Yes, there is a finished cut of the movie. Finished as of right now. We will be changing it. There's some more filming to do. But I'm glad that you had that comment, that it made you realize that you weren't alone, because that's how we are trying to frame this movie, to let people know that this is a common thing and it is okay to feel this. And I think people do look at Apache Troop, and you guys were in combat so much and out there, that they other veterans who were in Vietnam who know what Apache Troop are, when they look at you guys and say, wow, okay, these guys are saying it's okay. It is okay. And that's why we thank you for coming on the podcast, for you to get on here and talk about this and let other people know that, yes, this is a normal thing. We truly thank you for being willing to do this.
Yeah, and thank you. And I would just want to say one more thing. We couldn't have done it ourselves. We had helicopters over our heads. We was all a team. I couldn't have, I served with the greatest soldiers that I could have served with. And you've met some of those soldiers, and they were very, very good soldiers. I was blessed and fortunate, and the reason I got to come home is I served with some great guys, and proud that I served with them.
I'm sure it was a great feeling to be in massive contact and hear the Cobra say, all right, I'm beginning my run.
Yes. Yeah.
So shout out to the Cobra pilots and the gunship
yes.
pilots.
Yeah. There's nothing better than being in contact and seeing that scout, that loach come over the door gunner hanging out, and that loach come right over top them trees, and you're thinking, yeah.
And shout out to the lift pilots for coming to get you guys and bring you home.
Yes, the best sound was the Hueys coming in, and when you got back to the base camp, there were people there that was taking care of you when you got back. Everybody done their job that was assigned, and we didn't have to tell anybody what to do. We done it, and it made us work together good as a team. We're now brothers, and the best friends I have right now.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you for coming on to do this. 100% appreciate you. We've told the other guys, willing to trust us with the story. You have an extra step of, we haven't talked to you this in depth before, and you still trusted us even after meeting us.
Yeah.
But for those watching, I want to thank you for watching another, now episode 104 of the We Were Young podcast. If you're watching on YouTube and just heard of us, make sure you hit that subscribe button, share it with your friends. Let's get the word out. If you're watching on Facebook, same thing, give us a like. And we're getting very close to putting this on to Apple, or to different iPad audio sites. We need a couple more episodes to make that worthwhile, but thank you for listening. I am going to give Zoom face while I look for the end. Paul, stay with us. But thank you, everyone. If you're watching on video, it's about to say video ended or suspended, but it's just me hitting end. Thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.